George, thank you for the great introduction. So obviously it's post-lunch. Kelvin tried his hardest to hype you all up, but knowing that you are probably all trying to digest your food, and this is always the worst timing for a session, we're going to try to keep this really light and conversational so that you don't feel like you're just being read slides at. This is going to hopefully do more than just like shove information out at you, and our hope is to inspire you to think about when you go back to your own teams, how to look for people that maybe you wouldn't traditionally think of as automators within your organization.
And we're going to be interactive, so get your after lunch juices flowing.
All right, so who we are and what we're doing up here. So cracking the automation code. So essentially what we're looking at doing is we're trying to bust the myth that your automation is only technical. This is essentially just a way of looking at it that we have a lot of very smart people in this room that are phenomenal automators, but there needs to be maybe a little bit more to it. As George introduced, I'm Brian Simpson. I'm the Integration and Automation Specialist at an MSP out of St. Louis, Missouri called Carpel Solutions. And then I'm joined by Ashley Cooper, the VP of Community here at Roost.
Yeah, and for this conference, you can spell it K-E-W-P-E-R. No, it's fine. It's not co-opper. There are some deviations, which we'll learn today as well. But yeah, I think before we get started, I'll apologize that I do not have as many chicken puns off the top of my head as there were in that intro, but we'll try to keep it fun anyway.
Yep. All right.
Got a first one for a Slido?
Yep.
Moment of truth?
We got our first Slido. It's up. You can either do that, join, it's slido.com, and the access code is CLUCKU.
Y-O-U.
Y-O-U. Now, just a word of caution, we are a little tongue-in-cheek with our join code, but please keep in mind that you are putting all of your responses when we get to some freeform stuff up in front of an audience. Please keep it PG.
Don't take the wrong lesson from that.
Yeah.
So this wasn't really meant to be like a right or a wrong. This is more so to get a stage of like where everybody's mindset is in terms of what it means to build successful automations or to have somebody who builds successful automations. Curiosity and a willingness to experiment, that's kind of the main point, right? Like, if you're really set in one of the communities that I'm in, I have my name jokingly referred to as Old Dog's New Tricks Therapist. And one of the things that kind of comes from is thinking that these things, when I have all of these skills and I have all of this knowledge and experience, that must be what I need to use in order to solve for different problems. I think all of you kind of agree, right? Being able to write the code to do the things isn't necessarily the most important piece, right? We've all probably seen some really impressive looking code that was human written that did really poor things. And so thinking about things the right way is a big part of that.
Yeah, and your automators are really just an extension of your help desk anyway, and anybody that's interviewed or hired for a help desk person, that curious mindset to dig into a problem and troubleshoot is the same type of thing that you really want to be able to dig in. So again, like we said, here's our premise. If you can't write the code, you can't build a real automation, period. As spoken by someone, somewhere, maybe even in this room at some point. Over the next few minutes, as we kind of explore with you all, this is really the myth that we hope to bust in you to really reach outside of your dev-minded folks to be able to dig into what it is that you find. We fortunately have two very good examples in ourselves, and I'll let Ashley kind of talk through her story.
Yeah, okay, so how many people started technical? How many of you know somebody who is really good at figuring out technical problems that wouldn't call themselves technical? I bet that there's probably a lot more if we were reframe what that means a little bit too, but a lot of hands. I sat on a panel a little while ago, and Tara from EmiBot was actually saying, she's like, oh, I don't really belong on this panel. I'm not technical like you guys. And it's you manage a massive system with a whole bunch of engineers and a whole bunch of operations and a whole bunch of events you're going to, and you make it seem like it makes sense. I'm like, there are technicalities to that you exhibit and that you are strong in. That process savvy mentality is where my technical ability came from. And so, I've actually, even myself, said it a few times today. I'm like, I'm not an engineer, or I'm not a dev when somebody says that to me. And it's like, I'm not. I would agree that I would call myself a process engineer, like if I wasn't from Canada and that word wasn't protected. But really, where I came from was a dispatcher role, a need to solve for downstream and upstream problems. At my MSP, when I was there, I started in 2009, they brought me on to handle our PSA. Like, we had just bought it. I was going to be doing some basic troubleshooting and stuff like that too, but it was part of my responsibility to implement these systems. And there was all kinds of little anti-patterns and things going on, like texts, like we didn't have a dispatch portal. We had to send out manual updates to say, where are you going? We didn't know how to ask the right questions to figure out whether things needed to be on-site or remote. Sometimes we wouldn't find out until later. And we were putting expensive people on inexpensive tasks. And all of that stuff was just a system of silos that didn't have the right visibility. And so really where I doubled down and what I learned is like, okay, well, here are my limitations. I don't necessarily know how to build software, but I do know how to learn how the data flows. And so I teaching myself SQL. I've never touched coding language before in my life, and I was like, this seems logical. I've used like spreadsheets and things like that before, so teach this to myself. And I figured out a way to tie all of those things together that typically in a lot of MSPs that I see today, like they don't even assume that those are the people to be enabled to do those types of things. A dispatcher will sit there and will probably have a whole bunch of individual pain points that they're just accommodating for or handling in a bunch of different ways that if they're enabled or if they're surfaced, that they could actually help drive what that intuitive end-to-end strategy looks like. I don't know if I was supposed to hit anything else there, but that was kind of my thing. So connecting the dots, pulling people together, like where are the gaps, and how do we pull those? Oh, the pain chain, that was what I was gonna say. We talked about this where it's like, okay, so our sales team wanted to have invoicing. They wanted to have that invoicing being able to then be reported on. They couldn't report on it if it wasn't being marked as paid, and we couldn't tell whether it was paid unless the accounting team was doing all these manual updates and all these journal entries and all of this stuff where it was like, they're already going into ConnectWise, they're already going into these other systems, and it's like that joke about like, oh, I'm gonna write this massive letter, but somebody doesn't want all that information, so I'll turn it into 10 points, and then the person will take those 10 points and turn it into a big letter, or reverse, whatever. It's like, figure out where those inefficiencies are, and that's where I kind of found that calling in the connector.
And then I'm actually late in life convert to the IT industry. Something years ago when I was getting my college degree, it was for business administration. I came out of school, I worked retail, bounced around into other industries for a while, some less savory like bill collector and insurance claims adjuster, things that paid the bills but I didn't feel great about. Eventually I found a calling for IT. I've always been, like we called myself here, I'm like the tinkerer. I liked digging into systems and processes and trying to just figure out how to make things easier for myself. This led me to jumping into one of those questionably effective, but it worked for me, like 10-week crash courses. I don't recommend them for most people because I don't know that everybody has the ability to switch a career like that, but I guess it worked for me. Got my first IT job at Carpel Solutions. I worked an absolutely grueling, heartbreaking 9 months on the help desk. and got promoted to technical account manager. I was able to lean in on my, varied business background and understanding to get out of help desk and into the TAM role. My very first client on-site visit, I sat there for 25 minutes as the contact berated me for how bad our onboarding process was. We could not get new user onboarding right. Well, me having taken an entire week of PowerShell, a whole week of PowerShell, not as a scripter, said, oh, there's got to be a way I can fix this. Got the scope of authority at that point of the nobody's going to tell me no, and learned Power Automate on the fly and built out this very rudimentary onboarding system. We saw some massive gains with it. Like, it was one of those things that we went from this client was ready to walk out the door to saved their business. This HR person that was our primary contact loved us. They re-upped every year. When they got bought by a new company and the new CFO came in and kind of big-footed it and moved IT companies, we re-onboarded them a year later. Like, this was a huge way for me to kind of give that spark of, oh man, this stuff could really actually do something with it. We power automated as much as I could get out of it and hit all the fun limitations that any of you have ever tried to do with like Power Automate and on-premise infrastructure. They don't talk great, and tinkered and finally got approval to get an RPA and Roost. This led to just being able to just dig in on the process, and where I really excelled with not just getting in and doing a bunch of code, because I will still tell you, I still look up Jinja literally every day because I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't come from a programming background, but I understand what steps it takes to ensure that the users are created or billing reconciliation happens in exactly the way that it does. Because that was my background, right? Like I said, my original job that I came out of college with was retail. For Walgreens, great company. Back when we used to do in-house photo processing, I became the guy that always had to fix it because I was the only one that took the time to actually learn how it worked. So that just kind of carried and extended all the way through. So like my non-technical background has me now up here standing talking to a room full of highly technical people about a very technical product that hopefully means that you don't miss out on what like Ash and I can do.
A very technical product that works really hard to eliminate some of the technicalities.
Sure does. All right, so we've got our next slide up here. How much code do you personally write today?
And then thinking about what Brian just said, right? Like, what would you say your answer would be there? I say ChatGPT helps me get by.
Yeah, ChatGPT helps get me by. Like, I absolutely lean on, reading the docs. Ash created that Roosty Jinja Ninja that I still ask questions to about how to do certain complex things that aren't the list comprehension that I think I have memorized by heart actually now. So I dig in on a lot of that. Quite a bit of you think you're dabblers. Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of people who are skilled in the Turing complete programming languages, kind of dabbling, being skilled. About the people who are like, I'm not a coder and ChatGPT helps me get by, I do wonder what you are actually, like, let's talk after. Let's see how much you actually know. I bet it's more.
Well, on that topic,
yeah, let's go to the next one.
What do you think the most common Turing complete programming language out there is?
Yeah. All right, we'll give this a moment to pop up with people's answers. Python, yep. JavaScript. What is Turing complete, Brian?
I don't know. I'm not a programmer.
Does anybody want to answer that question? Kelvin, what is Turing complete? What does it mean? Exactly. Could do anything a Turing machine can. I'm going to wait a few, because I'm not seeing the right answer yet, so.
Well, don't cheat, you already know.
Oh.
Foul, okay.
All right.
Yeah.
The right answer is now on the board. Excel formulas, guys. It is the most commonly used Turing-complete programming language. How many non-technical people do you know writing formulas in Excel?
Yeah. Almost anybody in your office admin is certainly doing something to make their job easier with an Excel formula.
How many people who said that they don't code know how to do formulas in Excel?
So if we went back, how many of you would be changing your answers right about now, right? Like, yeah, maybe a little bit.
There's a few. I'm sure there's a few.
I'm still not.
I guarantee that at least some of you know how to do counts and sums and VLOOKUPs.
Yeah. So let's tie this kind of all together with, here's where we move on to, like, you have to find your hidden engineer. These are your problem solvers. These are your thinkers. These are people that are in positions that run into your inefficiencies every day and have to either find ways to work around them, or it just drives them absolutely crazy that they can't. They necessarily are building systems to help get through all of that chaos that we deal with on a day in and day out basis in managed services. A couple of examples that we've got up here, like, that are kind of, I think, the obvious two, are your dispatchers and your office admins. Like, these are the people that see almost every aspect of the movement of your operation and can really see the entire big picture. But who else do you think in that list? Feel free to shout out if you can think of anything obvious off the top of your head. What can you think of that would be another role in your organization, or maybe another MSP that could be an easy one to target to at least involve in your automation efforts?
Yeah, and reflect on that too. Well, I think we'll have a Slido for maybe. But I'll tell you one story just to tie back to the Excel point as well, because this goes back to before I even was in the MSP space. I was at a call center. Third-party, national, one of those like call centers, and I think that a lot of people kind of started out that way. I was troubleshooting Bell satellite television. Most of the time, it was an empathetic job because I was trying to help old women whose discs got misaligned from a storm, and they don't have anybody close to them, and they're like, well, my neighbor lives 2 kilometers down the road, I could ask him to come over. Okay, how old is he? 84? Okay, cool, let me know if I can send you a truck. I will try to find a way to make it free, just don't tell my boss, thank you. Yeah, I'm too empathetic for that job most of the time. I end up just trying to give everything away for free. But what I also realized was that empathy can look very different to different people, and it can also be logical, and sometimes it can show up in a spreadsheet. I realized that the reps on the phone, on the calls, needed a way to be able to track if they were doing any upsells, if they were doing any changes in packages, so that they can then have that conversation and advocate for themselves with their bosses. I also realized that those team leaders and those the pod managers needed ways to be able to say, look to their boss, here's how my team is performing. And there really wasn't anything like that, other than because, like I said, third-party call center, we had to wait for the HQ to generate whatever reports and send them down. But I was like, we're having these calls. We have this data. Why are we waiting for somebody else to package it up and bring it back to us? So it wasn't automated. I mean, technically there's automation. I did realize this afterwards, but it was still very manual. There was a spreadsheet. They would plug in their numbers individually, but then there was a collective team one that rolled everything up. And so by figuring out the pain that was existing at this level and the pain that was existing at this level, and finding a way with whatever tools I had available, and at that time it was just my Excel skills, made it a lot easier for both parts of the team to actually drive the benefit that they wanted, which was ultimately do best for the company and the customer. So that's who I guess is in your company is putting together processes that make somebody's life a little bit easier, that think about the problems, even if they can't automate them.
Yeah. So this kind of will be your like write this down moment maybe. Who's carrying invisible complexity, and how can we set them free? So we've got our last Slido. Who is it? How can you enable them?
And this is a conversation, so you guys can throw whatever you want up here. We can talk about it. BPG.
Finance, yeah.
Finance is a big one. Like I was saying, yeah, the people who are managing the books, they don't want to be creating all those journal entries and all those accommodations and all those one-off entries. Like, if you're using ConnectWise, you've got, it's the only one I know, you have your GL mapping. What's going on there? Oh, so it's cool that it puts the counts of them. Account manager is a big one. They know so much. They're the ones having these one-on-one calls. Like, if you're not having a meeting with your account managers or your success or your whatever, saying like, what are you hearing? What are your problems? What are you spending the most amount of your time on? And like, they might even have an idea for you, right? Billing, yeah. Managers, big time.
Yeah, I think, highlighting this, I think the really important thing is to remember, like, as you build out, I know one of the topics you hear from some of the other talks is building out your automation center of excellence. I think you guys are really keying in on the point that cannot be restricted to just technical-ish roles, right? You see pain points being experienced from an entire wide array of your internal resources, from whatever that is to
that's the chaos in the system.
It's absolutely the chaos in the system. Account managers and finance and HR and all of these people. So, getting them involved in those, whatever cadence meeting it is you're setting as you're determining what your automation priorities are, and then digging in on scoping what the automation priorities are and what those workflows, outcomes need to do, digging in on a lot of those kind of things.
And how can you enable them? What are some ways that you guys can notice these people, that you can highlight them, that you can give them the space to feel like they can? Maybe there's a Slack channel where you can throw in like process ideas, or like if you notice that there's that person who's thinking about other people's jobs, instead of being like, hey, like, stay in your lane, ask them why they care about that other person's job, right? Maybe there's something that they see that's systematically involved with their stuff too.
Okay. We have a little bit more, but y'all are distracted.
We knew that would happen, it's fine.
And then I'll make one final shout for something I actually didn't see any of you put on the list. Your tier one. Pull your tier one. They are your people that, more than even your service manager or your dispatcher or anything like that, they're the ones that are feeling the pain of every ticket that comes through that door. They hit every problem, whether it escalates beyond them or not. They're seeing it, and they can usually recognize that pattern before any imperfect PSA system that you probably have set up to data mine can tell you it's a problem. Let them surface those, because if they're loud enough about it being a pain point, it's a really big pain point, and it's not just their pain point, it's your customer's pain point. So expand that, use that, and really, really go with it.
And I'll go back to the first Slido we did, where we said what makes a good automation builder, and the very top two answers were curiosity and understanding the pain of the process deeply. If there's a person who uses a system or a solution and they're deeply ingrained in that, they should probably be the one that owns the strategy of the automation, even if they're not the one that's building it. You should never be going back to them and saying, here's how you have to work around what I've built to accommodate your problem. That's poor design, right?
Yep. All right. I think that's almost our time also. So thank you very, very much.
Now you can clap louder the next door.